Everyone, I am Dr. N. Kalai, Assistant Professor, Department of IT from Fatima College, Madurai. In this video, we are going to see about the Android activity lifecycle, under which we are going to see about working with the Android logging system, rotation and multiple layouts, understanding the Android activity lifecycle. The Android logging system. Android supports a shared log file which is used to write information and debugging messages. It is implemented by the class android.util.log. Here is an example code for log class. So here we have called the onDestroyed method using log.d method. So here we have given some of the common logging methods like v of string comma string. V means verbose, D means debug, I means information, W means warning, and E means string error. So here there is an example for log.i method for printing a message in the logcat window. So how to access the logcat window? Logcat is used to view the system log in Eclipse. Windows menu, under Windows menu we can have a option called show view, under which we can get the logcat window under others option as shown here. So this is the logcat window. This is displayed in the bottom of the Android Studio or Eclipse window. Activity. An activity is the single screen in that Android. So for whatever app we are having, the number of screens is the number of activities in that app. So it is a single screen in the Android. It is like a window or a frame in a Java. The activity life cycle. By the help of activity, you can place all your user interface components or widgets or views in the screen. There are 7 lifecycle methods of an activity under Android which behave at different states. These are all the methods and their descriptions. OnCreate. OnCreate is called when the activity is first created. OnStart. This method is called when the activity becomes visible to the user. OnResume. This method is called when the activity starts interacting with the user. OnPause. This method is called when the activity is not visible to the user. OnStop. This method is called when the activity is no longer visible to the user. OnRestart. After the activity is being stopped and now it is being prior to start, then this onRestart method is called. OnDestroy. This is called before the activity is being completely killed or destroyed. So this is the life cycle of an activity in Android as a pictorial representation. When the activity is launched, first of all the onCreate method is called in order to create the activity at first. After it goes to onStart, where the activity becomes visible to the user, and then it becomes onResume. It will call the onResume method where the activity starts interacting with the user, and then the activity is now in the running state. Then another activity comes into the foreground. So we are diverting or the user gets distracted from the current activity to the new activity. Now the activity life cycle goes to onPause method when the activity is not visible to the user now. Then onStop method. Here the activity is finishing or being destroyed by the user or the system. And finally it calls onDestroy. So after onDestroy, the activity is got killed or shut down. So in meanwhile, if after the onPause method is called, it may go back to onResume method or it may go back to onStop or destroy. Again, After on stop method is called, it may go back to on restart and then it will get started again and the process continues, or it will get destroyed. Activity life cycle. So as users navigate in and out of the application, the activities changes their states. So as we have seen in the life cycle methods, the methods are being called and called back. So as we have seen in the life cycle picture, we can say that the activity or the life cycle has three states: running, paused and stopped. And under running, the activity has the focus of the user. Under paused, the device goes to sleep, the activity is partially hidden. Under stopped, the activity is obscured by another activity. There are two types of activity states, which are static state and transient state. Under static state, the applications can exist for a long period of time. Under transient state, the application can exist for short period of time. So in transient state, after on create and on start, the on resume is called back. So this is an example for transient state. So far we have been working with a single activity. However, many programs will have several activities. So an application has to launch that app. So here we need to call launcher activity that starts when the application is run. This activity executes when the user clicks the application icon. The launcher activity is defined in Android manifest.xml file as shown here. So here we are having two activities. One is the default activity and another is the secondary activity. So the first activity has to launch the Android app. So the intent filter has the category of launcher, and then the second activity just carries the title of the activity. And creating an application instance, on create. So we typically implement on create method for each activity, and under this, the code under this on create method executes once for the entire lifetime of the activity. This method implements basic application startup logic, defines the user interface or the views under this on create, as well as it initializes class scoped variables here. On create is the first step in an application's life cycle. First we call the base class method, then we typically declare the user interface with set content view. After on create, the system calls on start and then on resume. A simple code for on create that sets the content view to the activity main XML file. So here under on create, the set content view method fixes the content to the activity.main XML file where the designing parts has been done. On destroy is the last callback method when the application is removed from system memory. In most cases we need to implement this method because most cleanup is performed in on pause or on stop, except if we call finish in on create. We can use this on destroy to kill long running resources. When a foreground activity is partially obscured, the system calls on pause. Note that the user may or may not resume the activity back. If the user returns the activity, on resume is called. There is no guarantee that the user will resume the activity though. When on pass is called, the application is partially visible. It is here that we should stop animations, save changes as necessary, release system resources such as broadcast receivers, release resources that consume battery life, keep the operations here. Resuming an activity. When the user resumes an activity from a paused state, the system calls on resume. The method is called every time an application comes to the foreground, including the first time. So initialize resources released in on resume. Stopping and restarting an activity. An application might be stopped and restarted because the user switches from app to app in the recent apps window. The user performs an action that starts a new activity. The user receives a phone call while using the phone. Use OnStop for complex tasks such as database write. Stopping an activity using OnStop. The OnStop callback fires when an application is fully obscured. User's focus is on another activity. Is an example for calling OnStop method. Activity instance still lives in the system memory while stopped, but the system might destroy the instance if application memory is short. So often we need to handle only on pause and on resume methods. Restarting an activity using on restart. On restart is called when an activity comes to the foreground from a stopped state. It is not called when the application first starts, but on start is called in both cases. Generally, we only need to handle on start. Rotation. When we rotate a device, the current activity is destroyed and then recreated. This resets the application state. Rotation also changes the device configuration. The device configuration means screen orientation, density, size, keyboard type, docking mode, etc. So normally the default window will call the activity.xml file under the layout folder. So when we rotate the device into landscape, it will call to the activity.xml file and under layout land folder. So here we need to do is we need to give same name for both the XML files, both in layout as well as layout land folders, so that the application won't get confused, and then it will by default it will call the default XML file. Thank you.